If the value of a college education isn't just about the major, then what is it? And more importantly, are we preparing students for a world that doesn't stay inside the boundaries of a single discipline? In part one, we started to challenge the way we think about college. In this episode, we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Robert Prickett, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and we'll go further into how learning actually connects, how disciplines work together, and what this means for students stepping into what comes next. Stick around. This is the Bulldog Mindset. Welcome back to the Bulldog Mindset, a podcast about learning, leadership, and the academic life of Gardner-Webb University. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Pillar, Associate Provost for Academic Affairs, coming to you from the Gardner-Webb podcast studio inside the historic Elliott House here in Boiling Springs. This is part two of our conversation with Dr. Robert Prickett, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. In part one, we started to challenge how we think about the value of college education, especially within the liberal arts, and why that conversation may be missing the bigger picture. Now we'll pick that back up. In this part of the conversation, we'll go deeper into how disciplines like the humanities and STEM actually connect, why an interdisciplinary approach matters more than ever, and what students are really gaining as they prepare for what comes next. Dr. Prickett, welcome back. Let's jump back in. Where I want to pick up at is within the liberal arts. My background is in STEM, environmental sciences and chemistry. Your background, education and English. And so oftentimes there's I won't call it a conflict, but humanities STEM. And I am a scientist who feels very strongly that they complement, that they go hand in hand, that they don't compete. They need each other. I'm curious in terms of your thoughts on that and your perspective about that divide. What does this mean, moving forward in particular around, you talked a little bit earlier about interdisciplinary programs. Talk a little bit about, here at Gardner-Webb and your experience across higher ed, humanities, STEM, and how you see those areas.
So I completely agree. I don't think they are in combat at all. And I think they can offer each other some amazing opportunities that I don't necessarily know that we always take advantage of, but I think there are there. And I think we take advantage of them in different ways. So I guess my first kind of reference point would be, right, when I think about humanities, right, it is typically kind of, again, back to that critical reading aspect, right, which I think is incredibly important, especially considering where we find ourselves at this moment in time in history, right? I am confident, and I make the statement, I see your information. I call myself my brain in my pocket. I'm guessing Knowles is over there as well, right? We have access to unlimited amounts of information. Minute by minute by minute by minute, right? Yeah. In all sorts of different ways, right? And our students, we know from research and data that they are on it even more than the three old guys here in the studio are on it, right? And so when I think of the humanities, when histories and English and world languages and that study of culture and that study of humanity, right? That's the key one of the key takeaways, that whole kind of concept of reading critically, especially in the wash of the amount of data that we are getting, the amount of information that we get on the daily. And again, because of the humanities piece, right, it's connected to that component of what it means to be human. Well, I don't know of a doctor that I have ever come across that I don't think, A, I hope you understand humanity. B, I hope you have whatever technical training you need to be doctor of whatever you're doing to me as I go see you Monday to check out my elbow. Right? But I also think, man, the amount of data that you get I hope you were able to kind of do that, right?
Yeah.
And so you have seen in the last few years there are multiple programs who are now touting the fact that their medical program has a humanities course that they are doing it. I remember a few years back, Johns Hopkins was very proudly proclaiming that they were having their doctors, their final year of coursework, were now taking a theater class. And the whole concept was they needed to know how to flip and publicly speak in intimate ways, one-on-one with someone else, but that they also actually had to think about the humanity of the person that they were dealing with. And while at the same time, I understand the whole concept of, if my doctor's cutting me up, I want them to kind of think of me as a piece of meat, not Robert, their buddy, right? And if that's going to mess things up for them. But at the same time, right, they want to have that, right? And so there's that really interesting tug and pull. I was just reading an article in either Inside Higher Ed or Chronicle couple months back, and it was talking about how the humanities were starting to come into computer science, and especially with the AI, because it's the whole. I mean, my joke about Skynet for all those 1980s Terminator people, but right, part of it is that whole conceit of if we have created AI, right? There's a reason. I'm going to slip in an MCU just for Noel's sake, right? There's a reason Ultron knows what the solution is, and that's to wipe out humanity, right? We want our AI to think of us humans in a little bit of a humanities kind of way. And so, I don't think they have to compete. I'm going to use my daughter as an example of, the reason she was interested initially in biology and communication was she was wanting to kind of work at CDC initially, is where she thought she would do. That was kind of her envision of the career path she wants. I don't know that she'll necessarily do that now, but it was that conceit of wanting to have the science background, but really wanting to be able to communicate it to the public. And I don't know of a doctor who wouldn't be better off in that scenario.
So, I know for a while now, going back at least a decade, that students who were pre-med looking to go that route, med schools were actually starting to, it used to be you needed to major in biology, you needed to major in biochemistry, right, if that's the route you're going to go. In part because the courses you take in those majors are the med courses that you need in order to take the MCAT in order to be successful. However, that has shifted. Now you can almost pretty much major in anything. You still need to take a core group of pre-med courses, but they're looking for those people who majored in business, majored in political science, majored in history, with that, for that exact reason, to get that.
Well, and I mean, think about lawyers. I mean, when you look at law schools, for years, it's not been political science as the lead major into law degrees. It's philosophy, it's English, it's right. I mean, it's those components where you have those other components too of, again, another kind of thing, because ultimately the law school, back to the specialized training, they're the ones who want to train you how to be a lawyer. They want you to be able to read, write, think, and adapt and look for complex issues.
I'll add a companion podcast, Dr. Josh Parrott, Parrott's Perch. We recently had a guest who is a pastor, and he shared something very similar. He said he talks to college students all the time and says if you want to pursue seminary, you don't have to study religious studies and philosophy as an undergrad. You don't have to, because once you get to seminary, that's where the focus is going to be.
Well, after some of our faculty, Dr. Scott Schaff and Dr. Jim McConnell, Dean of the School of Divinity, they've got degrees back going into engineering and computer science, mathematics. So, no, absolutely. Well, so for me, if I'm hearing all this, what I clearly see as a path forward is clearly that it's not just simply creating new interdisciplinary majors, but it's also what can we do with existing majors to make it more interdisciplinary.
Yes.
And that's where one of the challenges, though, is real quick in terms of territory. Again, right now, college degrees are 120 credits. Yes, there's the new 3-year 90-credit degrees, applied bachelors that are out there, and that we're absolutely looking at. But, that means if we're going to make our major more interdisciplinary, that means, we need to adjust, cut, remove some of our, and there's that they look at their programs. Every single one of these is critical. Can't do it.
Right.
So what do you see as the path forward in terms of trying, not so much necessarily in creating new interdisciplinary majors, but making majors more interdisciplinary?
I think there's several, and I think we've got a couple really sweet examples that are kind of at the back end of it already. So Shout out to, I believe, previous podcast guest, Elizabeth Amato.
Yes, she's been here a couple of times.
Poli-sci here. She has just undertaken this year recognition that she really needed to look at the political science major. And it was purely to move towards the recognition that political science in this day and age is interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
There's no if and buts about it, right? And she did the hard work of kind of recognizing that. And so there's now opportunities in her revamped major that is going to be coming out soon where economics, there's business courses, there's psychology sociology I mean, there are, this kind of recognition of those kind of components. And ultimately, it is the recognition that this is what her students needed. Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, I think that's to your, what's the line? I think that's the line, right? It's that recognition of, well, wait a minute, are we doing a disservice to our students at this point in time? And again, right, we in academia, to get through that flaming hoop of PhD, you study minutia by yourself in a corner of some
very narrow,
very room, right?
Yep.
And then if you're going to go into Gardner-Webb or a small private liberal arts college, right, then you sort of become a generalist, but you're not really trained to be a generalist, but you kind of are a generalist. But I think there is that component where, no, this is so important because this is what I've studied, where, again, I think where our faculty are great is where they flip that switch and are like, okay, wait, what do we need to do for our students? Like computer science, having that mathematics department, having that conversation about, oh, wait a minute, we probably need to be kind of morphing into data science a little more because that's really probably where mathematics at this moment in time are kind of focused in. Oh, computer science. Oh, well, maybe we need to be moving away from coding. Well, if they do, then that's, 2-3 courses, and all of a sudden they've got room now to potentially bring in a humanities course and have those conversations. Another great example I would throw out there is, so we have a communication, art, and design department, which is communications, journalism, PR, communications. It also houses graphic design, and it also houses our fine arts program. And this past year, they also have kind of gone back through and looked at their curriculum. Some would view, obviously, the communication piece, the journalism piece as a professional piece, PR as a professional piece, whereas the fine arts, of course, being a broader topic. But what they've done a really nice job, I think, is really truly looking across and seeing that, a student who might come here and is interested in art really needs to know how to design a website. They really need to know how to do some graphic design because they're going to need to make a logo to sell that art. Oh, they really need to actually have some PR class because they're going to need that. But then what they realized was, no, that's true for all of our students because somebody who wants to go be a reporter, I mean, as we all know, they're going to have social media accounts that they are solely likely in charge of. They're going to possibly be the one person on the scene, depending upon what news outlet they're on, where they're setting up the camera as well as being the on-screen talent. So they may need to actually have some videography coursework and have some sense of it. And so they did a really nice job this year of looking at them and interdisciplinarily creating new degrees that are going to start in the fall. And it is purely for the recognition that their students are going to need this as they move forward.
Well, and you say new, but I mean, they're redesigned.
Redesign.
I definitely want to clarify. Well, and when you look at higher ed administrators, I think this is a good example of where in practice, because, yes, there is a degree in EDD and higher ed leadership. And there are some people who have that, who are in administration. But there's a lot of folks, you and I, for example, our backgrounds are not in that. But, my education definitely could be pointed to training me towards a certain direction path. Mm-hmm. But whether it was by choice or by, hapstance or circumstance, that path shifted. Mm-hmm. And my ability to do my work well and get to the point where I'm at is in large part due to my ability to utilize skills I learned in through the liberal arts to be able to adjust. Because, a class that I often joke at when I was in my doctoral program, it was a mouthful, organic contaminant hydrogeology, a very detailed geochemistry heavy course. And so as an academic administrator, I've often joked that, when someone may say like, oh, how did you learn to navigate that, do that? Well, when I took organic contaminant hydrogeology, the chapter on, never was it in that education. And again, someone could very quickly be like, oh, so then that wasn't worth. No, that was absolutely worth it, because the type of thinking, the approach, fostering a curiosity, love of lifelong learning, all critical as we move forward. Well, we're, as I mentioned at the OnStart, we're at the end of the semester. Students are finishing finals, walking across the stage. As you think about graduation right now, what do you hope students understand about the value of what they've just experienced?
I have always told my students, especially as they graduated and were going out, we would celebrate, right? Them getting a job. Again, English ed, so it was a pretty close setup. And so, I would congratulate them when they would say we have the job. But inevitably, what we would talk about is the fact that, in a lot of scenarios, right? This is commencement. It is meant to be the beginning. It is meant to, now you're starting something.
Great point.
Right? And so
we see it often as a finish.
We see it as very much a finish. And there is nothing that is really set up for us to be the finish of, right? Even those, again, right, getting into the conversation about whether they change their careers, 5 times, or whether they somehow are an English teacher from the moment they start and they retire 30 years from now as an English teacher, right? This is really the beginning component. We are, research now shows us our brains don't stop until 25, right? Most of our graduates are now significantly under 25 when they graduate. With the new rise in dual enrollment, associate degrees and things, we're having 19, 20-year-olds graduate with an undergraduate degree. And so it really does, I think that's the piece that I always stressed was I was so proud of them for complete, kind of to Noel's point, I'm proud that they completed this segment, this episode. But that's what it is. It's right. I mean, I have laughingly heard in reference to education, right? The real world. And, my line was always, listen, if this is a dream, then I would have different dreams about most of my normal day. But I do think there's a component where we kind of, we take these students, these adults, young adults, we kind of put them in an idyllic situational setting, right? They walk across a beautiful quad. They see the mountains in the distance. The sun rises and sets, and right. But it really is, again, we are just part of that development of them into hopefully, right, good citizens, hopefully problem solvers, hopefully, right? I mean, again, the thing I love most about Gardner-Webb in some ways is the distillation, which I think is perfect. Our motto for God and humanity. It's not just one, it's truly both pieces. And so truly, for me, when we get to the commencement part, it really is that kind of, I want it to be that focus. And that's what I talk to students about is, no, we are so glad you were here. Here's what I know you have gained from this experience. And I can rattle that off, right? I can rattle everything we've talked about off with no problem. And students will nod and shake your head just like you two are doing, right? And then I look at them and I'm like, okay, so now I'm excited to see what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Right. Whether that's grad school and you're going to just get deeper into your intellectual growth, whether that's career and it truly is, this is what you wanted to do and you've known you've wanted to do this and now you're going to go be fill in the blank, or whether it is, I don't really know what I want to do next. And I'm like, great. There is way too many things out there and you've got way too much time. You will figure it out. Yep. Let us know how we can help.
Yeah, potential employers, all of these things we're thinking about, they want to know, can you solve problems? Are you a problem solver? Can you complete the task? Mm-hmm. Can you follow guidelines or direction? And can you meet deadlines? Mm-hmm. And all of those things, hopefully by the time that you walk across that stage, you've been able to experience aspects of that and hopefully succeed and complete aspects of that with a grade that allows you to move forward.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, we as you mentioned earlier, the real world.
Right.
And what's the reality today is the more and more that there is really a big difference from a particular school between what they're going through during their college years and the real world, that's a bad sign. If there's a huge dichotomy there.
No, absolutely.
It should really be much more blurred and there. But the one part that is true though about college perhaps is if you are trying to make it as much as the real world as possible, experiential learning, things like that, college does afford the ability though to have a degree of that, safety net or that net that they that can catch you a little bit. And that's where you should make mistakes. You should have experienced failure.
That's right. Absolutely.
But perhaps maybe not at the same kind of repercussions or consequences that you would have when you're not in college. And I purposely there didn't say, well, once you're in the real world.
Right. No.
The more
right.
we separate that,
Yep.
Well,
and truly, right. Another piece of those pieces when you see kind of what employers are looking for, right? Part of it too is that resilience piece.
Yeah.
And part of that resilience is, okay, you messed up. You did not study for this exam and you took this exam and you failed this exam. Now, let's talk about the repercussions. Here's the repercussions. All right. Now let's talk about how we're going to fix that. And here's how we fix this, right? Now, part of that resilience is given that safety net so that they can do that. But that's part of one of those pieces that, again, that soft skill that employers are looking for is to sit there and talk about, okay, tell me a time you were resilient. Okay, well, here it is. Freshman year, I blew it and had this and this and this, and lo and behold,
absolutely.
right? And here it is out the other
It's
end.
more about how you respond to that failure,
Absolutely.
how you move forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bulldog Mindset. We'll be back with more of our dialogue with Dr. Robert Prickett after this break.
At Gardner-Webb University, college is more than just classes. It's community. A living learning community, or LLC, gives first-year students the opportunity to live together, take classes together, and grow together, all while building friendships that last far beyond freshman year.
It's just more about building community, and that is something that really matters here at Gardner-Webb.
Research shows students in living learning communities experience stronger campus belonging.
It gave me kind of like a sense of belonging and people to surround myself with.
Living learning communities not only help with the transition to GWU, but set students up for success moving forward.
It's a really nice way just to get connected with people with similar interests, people trying to pursue similar goals.
At Gardner-Webb, the living learning communities offered each year are based on student interest and enrollment.
Each community connects you with faculty mentors, specialized programming, and students who share your passions.
We all come together, we spend time with each other, making sure everybody's okay. We're really a tight-knit community.
Whether you're leading service projects, exploring your faith, performing on stage, or diving deeper into academics, there's a place for you. Living learning communities help you maximize your first year both academically and socially. Find your community and become more at Gardner-Webb University.
Welcome back to the Bulldog Mindset. We'll now bring you more of our chat with Dr. Greg Pillar and Dr. Robert Prickett.
As you look ahead, not just at Gardner-Webb, but higher education more broadly, where do you see this conversation going around the value of liberal arts?
I think it's, in some ways, this isn't a new conversation.
Yeah.
Again, back to the brains in our pockets, right? I think it has more to do with, in some real ways, in current society, is what we clearly know is the inundation of information, whether accurate information or not accurate information, back to the critical reading and thinking skills that hopefully we are teaching our students, right? But I think this conversation has been around, right? I mean, there's a reason why, one aspect we have to look at, Pew has been for years asking about the value of higher ed. Well, that's not a new occurrence, which should tell you this has been a question for a while.
Yeah.
Where I think it has become different is, again, I think in the current environment we find ourselves in, right? It is the politicalization of it. It is the broadening of kind of societal setup in terms of kind of, the combative nature, if you will, of kind of social media and information and all that. So I think it's going to always be here in terms of kind of that conversation, because I think it has been here, right? I mean, there's a reason why it was pejoratively called the ivory tower, right? I mean, there's always been a conception of this. So I think it will always be here in terms of kind of the value of higher education. I don't necessarily mind that. Where I think we don't do, where I think we as a society don't do enough due diligence, right, is to really kind of, I think we simplify that ROI conversation to, I paid $5 for tuition, and as soon as I graduate on May 8th, if in May 9th,
I'm not making $10.
I'm not making $10, then, right? And again, I think that is, I don't think that is the right math. It is too much, life is too complex for that kind of math.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed for now, however long we've been discussing, right? It's one of those, if we're going to want to solve the complex problems of the world, you're going to have complex time. You're going to have complex questions. You're going to have complex discussions. You're going to have to talk to people who you may not agree with to figure out an approach to X, Y, and Z, right? And so it really feels like not only is that ROI investment just painfully too simple, even if you take it as, right, there's still the research out there that shows you if you have a degree from
over time,
over time, regardless of what your degree is, you are going to pay at a higher earning. I mean, so even the, simple math, we can still, as academia, can still point to and say, well, yes, and here's the research that shows, regardless of your degree, in 10 years, 15 years, I mean, you're still going to be making more than if you didn't have a college degree.
Yeah. Well, the real challenge in there is if that was the math, I don't think, clearly then we're not having the ROI discussion.
Right.
But we're, the part of where it's really sort of caused or been at the forefront is, on one hand, yes, you have the rising costs of schools, tuition and stuff like that. And when you get to the point where students are taking on a huge amount of debt, then that becomes a valid thing to bring up.
No,
and
absolutely.
So some of that needs to get under control. But at the same side, and all this is for, we could do like dozens of episodes on all of these topics.
Sure.
But the other part of that too, though, is what's amazing is especially for nonprofit private institutions, the difference between the sticker price and the real price that students pay.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Discounting.
No, absolutely.
And so, even when the sticker price goes up, with discounting, what they're paying has actually been going down. Raises the question, then why don't we just sort of list it at the actual price it is? Again, a lot more. We can go on and on and on about that, but no, you're right. When it comes to that, oftentimes it's a little bit too focused on that. And of course, as everything is, it's always situational. It depends.
Yep.
And so for some, it's easy to get maybe past that and realize long term that's the case, but. And it's definitely not necessarily the case for schools like us, but more the ones that have the $100,000 plus tuition, where after 4 years you're graduating with $400,000 debt. Okay, no, that's what.
Right.
What are you going to be doing to be able to
absolutely
to address that?
Well, and again, this is one of those complex problems, right?
Yes.
I mean, right. And again, it's not that
maybe we should
any one thing, any one discipline, any one thing is going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
It's going to be truly that conversation. And I think that's, back to is this always going on? I think we have to have this conversation, but I think we also have to have this conversation with the mindset of, okay, so here are the problems with that. Is it, now let's talk about the marketing problem. Now let's talk about the value proposition problem. Now let's talk about the ROI problem. Now let's talk about the sticker price problem, right? Because again, now take higher ed out of it, right? And insert insurance, right? I mean, finances, any sort of societal kind of component, you can put that into that and have that exact same conversation in some capacity.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's where, I can't claim credit for this. I saw this recently, but some different possible models of how schools could be structured. So instead of majors, that, it would be around those problems. So it's not that you're majoring in meteorology or whatever, but, wouldn't necessarily call it majoring,
Right.
but you're pursuing the climate change. You're pursuing the global food insecurity. You're pursuing, whatever. And then that would necessitate, the nature of that program would be interdisciplinary.
Sure.
Because of it. But of course, that would be a drastic
That would
change.
be, I would say
that
would
is
be a
really
change.
tough for existing schools to do. But again, you've got program, whether it's Minerva or other types of new formats out there in institutions. But again, we can go on and on. When you think about your role at Gardner-Webb, what impact do you most hope to leave on your students and on the community?
My position's weird in that sense, where I realized pretty early that I am kind of 1 to 2 levels removed from the normal student interaction, to the point where I created a student advisory board for the College of Arts and Science my first full year here, in part because I wanted some student input and interaction. And I think really for me and my role, it's really for my impact on students, it's really to make sure that our faculty, curriculum, those components are where they need to be. And so it's supporting the faculty, making sure we have the best faculty here, which I think we do. I have seen time and time again our faculty go just mile after mile for our students. They're doing, amazing things with undergraduate research. They're doing amazing things with study abroad opportunities. They are, our faculty are just tremendous, and I can't praise them enough. And so every chance that I can, I do. And I think really in my role, it's to push in a loving and supportive, non-violent way our faculty, department chairs, to kind of have those reflective conversations, to kind of lead them towards, hey, I think we need to be talking again 3 to 5 years from now. Where do we need to be? Let's have that conversation now. Those are the things that I think I can do that'll impact students. And then it's just truly also, I am a big believer in, the rising tide raises all boats. And so I am always looking for opportunities to partner across campus, across the community, across the region. And if faculty bring it to me, great, let's have that conversation. Let's figure out what we can do and how to do that. And so for me, that's what I can do for the student experience.
If you could go back and give your first year college self advice now with where you're at today, what would you say to yourself?
First of all, this would I truly am one of those great examples of, I thought it was clear, my line was clear, and I come from a family of educators, like I said. My dad was high school, and they were very clear I should not go into high school teaching, education whatsoever. And so then I took a graduate course on the sociological foundational of education. Wasn't even like, hey, go teach English.
That's a light course.
It was like looking at the sociological foundational kind of historical aspects. And I walked out of it and I was like, I want to be a high school teacher, because that is not the path you take. So thinking about the fact of being here at Bowling Springs, and again, growing up in Indiana, I did not plan to live in Louisiana, and I lived in Louisiana. I did not plan to live in South Carolina. I live in South Carolina. So going back to tell myself, honestly, it's the thing that I think we talked about with the hidden curriculum. It is truly, I have been impressed with my daughter, who has tried to experience everything she could possibly, because again, she knows there's a safety net, right? She knows there's possibilities.
It's time to do it.
My daughter studied abroad for a semester in Cuba.
Wow.
And I spent Easter a couple of years back in Havana, Cuba. And it was just like walking around going, I can't believe I'm here. And then she's like, oh, yeah, this is here, I'm going to take you to the market we go to. And here, I want you to meet my host family. And she spent an entire semester there as a study abroad student. And that would be, back to that hidden curriculum piece, that would be what I would go back and tell myself is, nope, look for those advantages, because truly, right, it is life-altering opportunities. And sometimes it is as simple as a group of people who are playing cards and you ask to join them, to hearing Malcolm X's daughter talk, to going to see a symphony orchestra tonight at 7:00. But that won't matter because this is coming out later. But, again, many opportunities that we have at Gardner-Webb and that our faculty offer, undergraduates, summer scholars, the ability to kind of be paid to do scholarship as an undergrad with a one-on-one mentor is just an amazing opportunity that we have here. Our choir takes a tour around the region, but they also went and sang at the D-Day 80th anniversary experience and went to France. I mean, we just have so many different opportunities that all are educational. Every single one of those opportunities, I would argue, is something that, again, back to the liberal arts education, you're going to take away when you begin your journey post Gardner-Webb, and that's what you want. That would be the advice I'd give myself.
Well, final question. What open mic? What final thought you like to leave with our listeners?
Full disclosure, I knew some of these questions beforehand, and I give you that because the mic thing that I wrote, and this is what I wrote down in my notes, which is for me, again, education has always been the answer. In terms of my life, if I want to know something, I go research it, I learn about it, right? AI, I use it frequently. I am not opposed to using it frequently. I'm learning about it. I'm learning how to use it. But I'm also using it to educate myself, and that's what I realize is most of the time I'm using it to educate myself in some capacity. And because of that, because of this kind of conversation we've had today about the liberal arts, I think that's the piece that we haven't talked about as directly, and so that was my last little bullet point is that I really do believe education is that. Well, first of all, I was going to say magic bullet, but I don't believe in magic bullets. I don't believe there's one simple answer to it, right? But I do think it is the lifelong learner, right?
Absolutely.
That's it. It's education in all of its forms, formal, informal. But what I would argue is my final point for the liberal arts education is that's what we do. We also instill that kind of lifelong learner mentality with our students. And again, they're 21. God willing, they're going to live for 60 plus years. They're going to work in a variety of ways. And hopefully they're going to serve in a variety of ways as good citizens. But I think it all stems from our recognition that education truly is kind of that solution to, if we're going to fix something, there's got to be education to it. And I think that's what we do well here.
Love it. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, what stands out to me, many things stand out, but in particular, what stands out to me is that for the conversation about majors, careers, return on investment, we often miss the bigger picture. A college education, as you've pointed out, especially within the liberal arts, isn't just about what you study. It's about how you learn to think, how you connect ideas, how you cultivate personal and professional development through the opportunities that you mentioned, for example, that your daughter capitalized on, and how you adapt in a world that doesn't fit neatly into a single discipline. And what Dr. Prickett reminded us today is that the real value isn't always obvious in the moment, but it shows up over time in how students lead, how they solve problems, and how they step into what comes next, whatever that may be or however it may change. That's the work happening every day across the College of Arts and Sciences and throughout the Gardner-Webb University. It's happening in the classroom, across disciplines, in the city, in natural preserves, in the experience that challenges students to think differently and take ownership of their learning. And for the students who lean into that, who are intentional about how they use that time, here, the impact goes far beyond a single major. So Dr. Prickett, thank you for joining the podcast today.
Thank you.
For your leadership and for the way you're helping shape the experience for our students. To our listeners, thank you for spending part of your day with us. If you enjoy the episode, be sure to follow the Bulldog Mindset wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can always learn more about Gardner-Webb University, our programs and opportunities as we've discussed today by visiting gardner-webb.edu. And of course, a big thank you to the person who makes this all actually work and sound the way it's supposed to, our producer, Noel Manning. Noel is the reason that this sounds like a conversation worth listening to and not just two people in a random location with microphones hoping for the best. Until next time, keep asking better questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep building something meaningful for the opportunities in front of you. That's the Bulldog Mindset.